The train screeched into the station that morning as if it already knew something life-changing was about to happen. Among the crowd pushing toward the doors, one woman stood still, frozen, exhausted, and holding a life that felt like it was slowly slipping away from her fingers. Her name was Aamira, and when she finally stepped inside and found an empty seat near the window, she didn't know that this seat, this ordinary cushion of fabric and metal, was about to become the turning point she had been silently praying for, crying for, and breaking for. Before the train even moved, her eyes filled with unshed tears, not because of the noise around her, but because of the quiet storm inside her that no one else knew existed. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of one moment to change everything, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Aamira had always carried too much alone. She was the kind of person who spoke softly, smiled politely, and kept her struggles tucked deep inside where no one could see them. The world saw her as responsible, organized, and calm, but they never knew that behind that calmness was a heart constantly fighting to stay afloat. Her father had passed away the year before, after a long illness that drained everything: money, energy, hope. Her mother was still recovering emotionally. Her younger brother needed support for his education, and Aamira was working 2 jobs just to keep the household running. She moved through her days like a shadow, doing what had to be done, never what she wanted to do. That morning, the crowd around her buzzed with conversations and laughter. People discussed their weekend plans, office tasks, family events. But inside Aamira's chest, it felt like a heavy, slow ache that refused to fade. She clutched her small bag tightly and stared out the window as the city blurred past. Every passing building reminded her of something she couldn't afford, a dream she'd let go of, or a plan she had postponed for years. She used to love drawing. Her dream had been to study fine arts, but life had demanded that she choose survival over passion. The train rocked as it sped forward, and Aamira felt her breath becoming shallow. She could handle exhaustion. She could handle lack of sleep. She could handle responsibility. But she couldn't handle hopelessness, not anymore. That morning had started with an argument at home, her brother wanting to quit his studies to ease her burden. She couldn't allow that. She had always protected him, even when it cost her everything. When she left home, she felt as if she had failed him, failed herself, failed life, and so she sat there, motionless, drowning silently. She didn't notice the man who stepped into the train a few seconds later. She didn't see him glance around and then stop halfway when he noticed her hunched shoulders and trembling fingers. His name was Tahir, a stranger with a tired face but alert eyes, someone who had been through enough in life to recognize the look of someone breaking. He stood near her seat for a moment, studying her carefully, not in judgment but with concern. Aamira didn't notice him until she felt a gentle shift near her seat. She looked up and saw him standing. For a moment they locked eyes and she quickly looked away, embarrassed that her sadness was so visible. She tried to hold herself together, but something about the stranger's presence made her feel even more fragile, as if someone had finally seen her. Tahir didn't speak. He simply remained near her, giving her space yet staying close, as if silently saying, "You're not alone." Aamira tried to ignore it, but the kindness in his silence pressed against her heart like a soft, unexpected warmth. The train jolted slightly, causing a small notebook to slip from Aamira's bag and fall open at her feet. Pages filled with sketches, unfinished, rough, beautiful, spilled out like pieces of her. Tahir leaned down instinctively and picked it up, but when his eyes landed on the drawings, he paused. There was emotion in every line, detail in every stroke. It wasn't just talent, it was pain transformed into art. Aamira snatched the notebook back quickly, her cheeks burning. She muttered an apology, even though she'd done nothing wrong. But Tahir only shook his head gently, a soft smile touching his lips, the kind of smile that understood rather than pried. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Sometimes silence can be more comforting than any sentence. The train continued moving, and as minutes passed, Aamira's breathing began to steady. Something inside her felt lighter, not healed, but seen, and she didn't even know why. She glanced at Tahir again, this time truly noticing him. His clothes were simple, his eyes a little tired, but there was an unmistakable calmness about him. As the train slowed for the next station, he shifted his bag and gave the slightest nod toward her. It felt like encouragement, like a tiny wordless push to keep going. But he didn't get off the train. He stayed. Station after station passed, but Tahir remained standing near her, as if he had silently committed to staying there until she was okay. He didn't invade her space, didn't start a conversation, didn't make her uncomfortable. He simply stayed. And something about that quiet presence was enough to begin thawing the numbness she had felt that morning. When the train reached her stop, Aamira stood up reluctantly. She felt more stable now, more grounded, as if the world had given her a moment of unexpected relief. Tahir stepped aside to let her pass, and as she walked toward the door, she almost turned to thank him. But the words got stuck in her throat, and the train's noise drowned out the moment. She stepped off the train, but she couldn't walk away. She stopped on the platform, took a long breath, and looked back inside just once, and she saw him looking at her too, not with curiosity, but with the gentle, reassuring expression of someone who wished her well without expecting anything in return. The doors slid shut, the train pulled away, and Aamira remained standing there long after it was gone, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That seat on the train had given her a moment to breathe, a moment to break, a moment to begin piecing herself back together, but more importantly, it had placed someone kind in her orbit at the exact moment she needed it. The rest of her day didn't magically become perfect, but it changed. She went to work with a lighter heart. She called her brother during lunch and apologized. She told him he didn't need to quit his studies. They would take things step by step. She promised him they'd figure it out together. For the first time in months, she truly listened to herself. And that night, when she sat in her small room, she opened her notebook, not because she wanted to draw for someone else, but because she finally felt ready to draw for herself again. Her pencil moved slowly across the page, creating the outline of a train window, a blurred cityscape, and a silhouette of a stranger who wasn't a hero, wasn't a savior, just a moment of kindness she desperately needed. As days passed, she began looking forward to her morning commute. She often wondered if she'd ever see him again. Some days she did, some days she didn't. But she didn't cling to the idea of him. She clung to the idea of what he represented. Gentleness in a rushed world, softness in harshness, compassion without reason. One morning, weeks later, fate arranged something different. When she stepped into the train, she found the same seat empty again, waiting like a familiar friend. She sat down, smiling faintly. A few minutes later, someone approached, and when she looked up, there he was, Tahir, with a surprised but warm expression. He nodded again, the same reassuring way he did on that first morning. This time, Aamira smiled. They didn't talk, but they didn't need to. Something quiet and meaningful existed in the space between them, something built not from words, but from presence. And in that moment, Aamira realized something powerful. It wasn't the seat that changed her life. It was the reminder that she wasn't invisible, that someone, somewhere, cared enough to stay near, that one silent moment of kindness could pull a person back from the edge. Aamira didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if she would ever talk to Tahir or if their paths would remain parallel. But she knew one thing: she would never forget him, and she would carry forward the kindness he had shown her by being that silent assurance for someone else, because sometimes the smallest gestures create the loudest echoes in a person's life. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps move these stories to others who may need hope today. Before you go, tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment that changed everything?